My daughter received a bike from her uncle, my brother, on her 11th birthday. She was over the moon and excited to use it because it was on her wish list for so long. Days ago, I discovered that my husband reached out to my brother to ask for the recipient for the bike and returned it to the store, and kept the money for himself while my daughter was at school. The bike was at home. My daughter and I got home and she started crying after noticing the bike was gone. My husband was home at the time. He told me he returned the bike and got money in return to spend on something useful for us since the bike was just there as a distraction and there was no need for it now since we're the dead of winter. I was aggravated and lost it on him, saying it wasn't his, didn't come from him. And he didn't pay for it, so he had no right to touch it, knowing our daughter's been wanting it for a long time, and my brother was decent enough to buy it for her despite barely having money to get him by. I told him what he did was theft and insisted he hand over the money to me so I could repurchase it, but he said he spent it on stuff for the house and doesn't have any money left now. But I knew about the money he was stashing away in the bedroom that he forbade me from tossing, and I took some of it and went out to repurchase the bike while he was out the next day. He found out and verbally lashed out at me, saying I should have never touched the money he was saving for himself, which isn't much, but I lashed right back that I had to so I could repurchase the bike he took from under our daughter. He explained that he didn't keep the money for himself and instead spent it for necessities for our home, but he was at fault for taking the bike in the first place and he was responsible for getting it back. He yelled at me for almost 10 minutes, then stormed outside and started smoking. My daughter asked why her dad was upset and that she no longer wants the bike if dad doesn't want her to have it. But I assured her that's not the case and told her she shouldn't feel guilty and to just focus on enjoying her bike. My husband hasn't stopped grilling me about how I disrespected and undermined him, and managed to make our daughter hate him after making him look like the bad guy. I again said he shouldn't have touched the bike. End of the story. He's called me thief and juvenile for taking money from his savings and being sneaky about it. I was dating my boyfriend for 2 years. We didn't live together but lived on the same street, and I was always over at his place. We each had kids from a previous relationship, so I wanted to take the whole living together thing slowly. But we were together all the time and I just maintained my own residence. He commuted for work, and I knew his department got a new secretary. She was younger and married and had recently had a baby. I knew they were work buddies, and I even bought a birthday gift for him to give to her. After about a year, she moved to another state. My boyfriend and I decided to move in together, and we lived together for a year when I found out that he and that secretary had some type of non-physical but still romantic relationship while they were working together. And that is why she ended up leaving, because they both realized it was not appropriate. I stumbled on old emails between them that were strange, calling each other pet names. He was calling her baby and sweetie in work emails, telling each other that they couldn't wait to see each other at work, meeting up in the cafeteria for coffee every day. He told her he loved her. She lamented that she couldn't stop thinking about him while at home. They had little quarrels. I also realized that he was still Facebook friends with her. We talked a lot about this, and he said he was just so unhappy at work at the time and unhappy with our relationship because we didn't live together, that he was vulnerable to attention from a beautiful woman. He said it never became physical, but they were very emotionally entangled at the time for many months. I had no idea at all. He said together they decided the best thing was for her to accept another job offer, which he helped her get. He's very remorseful sometimes. Other times he will tell me that it's partially my fault because I rarely stayed over. I was doing everything for him to help him out because I knew how busy he was and how stressful life was for him back then. He will also try to tell me I was too cold. I've tried to move past this. I told him he needed to delete her from Facebook, and he did. It's been over a year since I found out, but I still feel so much hurt and anger if I think about it, or if something triggers me. Even something as stupid as a movie where the man is hooking up with his secretary. It's been over a year of anger, fighting, hurt and drama. The man I thought I was with is not the guy who would speak to his married secretary like that. Should I just give up? I'm tired of feeling this way. My sister was set to marry a guy who was a complete douchebag. He seemed like a nice catch to any outsider. He was tall, handsome, very confident, a doctor. Basically the sort of guy any woman would swoon over. Unfortunately, he was a sociopathic, unrepentant narcissist, devoid of any empathy, who would take out his anger on anybody he felt beneath him and seemed to enjoy doing it. You know how basically they say, don't look at how your partner treats you, look at how he treats others. And that's how he'll eventually treat you. My sister didn't pick up on that. I picked up on it early. This guy was really mean. Would berate and insult people for the smallest thing and would lose his cool with anybody who looked at him the wrong way. He started doing it to me, and I told my sister early on, this guy's an asshole. She was like,
Nah.
You two will eventually get along, you just got off on the wrong start. I told him I've seen him do that to other people, but she seemed to think, oh, but he's nice to me, I'm the special one. Maybe I can change him. Or I have no idea what she was thinking. After about 2 years together, when they were engaged, the cracks were evident. My parents loved him, his dad and my dad go way back. They both went to the same medical school together and have been close friends for decades. Her fiancé is also good friends with my 2 older brothers. After 2 years, my sister was realizing this guy was an asshole. He's always been an asshole, and he won't change. There was a really painfully obvious example one day when we were having dinner, and my sister's fiancé and my dad were having a discussion about something political. My sister tried to offer her opinion into the discussion, and they both snickered. Then this guy just started berating her and ripping into her in front of everyone, making her feel this small. I could sense her pain. She was just quiet and just sat there taking it. I was thinking, what are you doing with this guy? He has no respect for you. He has no love for you. Another time our family was at this dinner function where a lot of big people were around. My sister's fiancé completely left my sister alone at the table with me, and was sitting at this other table with 2 women. Very obviously flirting with them semi-drunk. He just left her all alone at the table. I asked her what was wrong, why was he ignoring her? She told me they had had an argument earlier and this was his way of punishing her. You see what I mean when I say this guy is a complete sociopath? My sister and I are really close, and even though I'm younger by far, little brothers aren't devoid of wisdom. And I've been urging her from day one to break up with this guy before she gets in too deep. Well, now that she'd spent 2 years with him and was engaged, she was obviously in too deep. And she used to tell me about all the outbursts he has, how he treats her with no respect. We often had long discussions, just me and her, where she'd spill open like a can of beans and just divulge all the bullshit that he's put her through recently. Sometimes she'd cry and I'd be there to help her out, but she still seemed to want to stick with him. She actually convinced herself that he loved her behind all that horrible treatment, and couldn't pull herself to cancel the engagement, what with our parents, his parents, everyone counting on it. She knew they'd all say she's crazy, turning down this smart, handsome doctor. I kept urging her to break up, but she stuck with the he'll change or he loves me deep down excuses. It all came to a heads when one day she very publicly exploded at him. We were having a huge dinner, both sides of our families, and I was sitting next to him. He kept bullying me the entire night. Move your elbows over, couldn't you wear something a bit more presentable? Stop sticking your hand out like that, it's rude, don't you think you've had enough of that? If I asked him to pass a bowl or the sauce or something, he'd hand it over but then pull away and be like, say please, say thank you. He was smiling the entire time, laughing. My 2 older brothers were also snickering. They didn't seem to mind this guy was publicly bullying me and having fun with it. He and my dad started having one of their conversations again, and my dad started airing out all his general frustrations and disappointments regarding me. And they started both talking about my life openly in front of me. Her fiancé then turned to me and started openly lecturing me, and when I tried to ignore him, hey, are you listening to me? What's the matter with you? Your dad never taught you any respect? My sister just then basically exploded. She was sitting at the other side of the table, guessing she didn't want to be near him. But she was watching what was going on the entire time. My sister just then basically exploded. She was sitting at the other side of the table, guessing she didn't want to be near him. But she was watching what was going on the entire time. About 5 years ago, my now estranged daughter, Edie, cheated on her boyfriend, Brad, and got together with a guy, Ken. He quickly started isolating her from family and my husband and I from her kids. Brad had moved back to his home state devastated after the breakup. I discussed red flags her. I let her know we are here for her and concerned. Her and Ken suddenly took off and moved to another state. For 5 months, my husband I worried about her and the kids as we had see at all with them. One day CPS showed up at our door with the oldest child. He was obviously injured from abuse that was reported by the school. We had no idea they had moved back to the area. We agreed to take them in. The next 20 months were traumatic, complicated, emotional, and difficult for everyone. Through it we re-established a relationship with the older child's dad, Dan. Daughter failed to comply with her plan and remained with Ken. Dan worked hard to get custody of his child and he gave ED scheduled weekly phone calls. She called oldest child 2x nothing since. We agreed to permanent custody of youngest. In the process, I put aside the hurt ED caused and agreed to scheduled weekly phone calls and supervised visits in person when schedules allowed. Legally, any or no contact is at my sole discretion. Ken was not allowed to interfere //attend. ED quit calling //scheduling visits after 3 months. I reset the call schedule to 1 XEA month. No calls. 6 months later she calls and wanted me to drop everything for a visit the following day. I couldn't because I had to go back to work. Calls stopped again. She left Ken, has a new BF. I know nothing else about her life / whereabouts. She started calling again about a year ago and I let her know that if she was consistent with her monthly scheduled calls, we would move towards weekly calls again. She called 2 months in a row, skipped a couple months then called 2 more months in a row. Last one happened to be night before child's birthday. She asked him what he wanted for his birthday. He said a call from her. The next day, as he blew out candles he said, "My mom is gonna call now." He had the biggest smile on his face. Call never came. He refused my offer to call her. We survived an emotional meltdown. Next month, no call, just a text after with a lame timing excuse as to why and sorry about the birthday call, she didn't feel well. Following month, I get a text that ED feels ill again, won't be calling. I am beyond frustrated at this point. I have looked past her refusal to rebuild a relationship with us, but when it comes to the kids my heart aches for them. Hey race where I might be the I responded, parents do not get sick time. We all had COVID recently, including me, and I still took care of the children. If you do not have any time for him once a month, I don't want my time wasted with your excuses. Of course, calls stopped again.